Our story begins with a young woman who, at the astonishing age of 20, had already risen to extraordinary heights of wealth and success. Coming from humble beginnings, she didn't inherit her fortune. She built it through her own relentless determination, creativity, and sheer hard work. Growing up, she was deeply influenced by her surroundings, observing how financial hardship could limit the dreams of those she loved. Despite the struggles, her family instilled in her a belief in hard work, resilience, and the conviction that she could create her own path in life. These values became the cornerstone of her journey, shaping her unique approach to business and success. Early on, she had a keen interest in fashion, art, and beauty, and she possessed a unique sense of style that caught the attention of her peers. But her interests went beyond aesthetics. She understood the emotional power that jewelry and fashion held for people. Jewelry, for her, was more than just adornment. It was a way to tell stories, capture memories, and express identity. She realized that while luxury goods were often associated with wealth and status, they also held the potential to symbolize personal stories, achievements, and resilience. This understanding laid the foundation for her vision of a jewelry brand that would resonate on a deeper, more personal level with customers. With only a small amount of savings and a big dream, she launched her first collection at 18. Each piece was meticulously designed, reflecting her unique perspective on beauty and strength. Her jewelry didn't follow trends, it set them. She was uncompromising in her standards, selecting only the finest materials and working with artisans who shared her dedication to quality and detail. Her pieces quickly gained popularity on social media, where her story as a young black entrepreneur inspired thousands. Customers were drawn not only to her designs, but also to her authenticity, her story of overcoming obstacles, and her determination to succeed on her own terms. As her brand grew, she faced numerous challenges. Breaking into the luxury market as a young woman, especially one of color, was not easy. The industry was dominated by long-established brands with vast resources, and newcomers were often dismissed as amateurs. Many doubted her ability to succeed, and some even attempted to discourage her, labeling her ambition as unrealistic. However, these doubts only fueled her drive. She refused to let stereotypes define her or her brand. She pushed through every obstacle, tackling each setback with resolve, using every criticism as motivation to prove her detractors wrong. Her unyielding determination to succeed on her own terms became an inspiration to others, especially young women of color who saw her as a beacon of hope. By the time she turned 20, her brand had become a household name, recognized for its elegance, quality, and the personal touch she brought to each collection. She had amassed a fortune that rivaled those of the industry's biggest names, becoming one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the world. Yet, despite her success, she remained grounded. She remembered where she came from and was determined to create a company culture rooted in respect, empathy, and integrity. Her stores were more than places of luxury. They were spaces where every customer was valued, and every story was celebrated. One of her biggest goals was to ensure that her employees shared her vision and upheld the values that had guided her to success. She knew that real luxury was not just about the product, but the experience and how people were treated. She wanted her staff to understand that each customer, regardless of their appearance or background, deserved to be treated with respect. It was important to her that her business wasn't just about making money, but also about setting an example of dignity, inclusivity, and kindness in an industry that often overlooked these values. She poured herself into training her employees, sharing her story and her journey to emphasize why respect and understanding were so vital to her brand's identity. She believed that if her team could grasp the deeper meaning behind her work, they would carry that sense of purpose into their interactions with customers. Yet, Despite her efforts, she knew that not everyone would immediately adopt these principles. She also understood that some prejudices ran deep and that only real-world experiences would reveal who truly shared her vision. Determined to ensure her values were upheld, she decided to conduct an experiment. She planned an unannounced visit to one of her stores, intending to observe firsthand how her staff treated customers when they didn't know they were being watched. This would allow her to see if they had embraced the culture she had worked so hard to create, or if there were areas that still needed improvement. For this visit, she chose a flagship location that had recently opened in the city's most prestigious shopping district. It was a store she was particularly proud of, and she had spared no expense in its design, ensuring that every detail reflected her brand's ethos of elegance and respect. On the day of her visit, she dressed simply, in a way that would allow her to blend in as an ordinary customer. Her outfit was elegant but understated, chosen to ensure that she would go unrecognized. She entered the store quietly, taking in the surroundings and observing the staff's interactions with customers. As she walked through the showroom, admiring the pieces on display, she felt a sense of pride in what she had built. Each piece of jewelry was a testament to her journey, a symbol of her vision and the hard work it had taken to get here. Little did she know, however, that this visit would soon take an unexpected turn, challenging her values and putting her resolve to the ultimate test. What she experienced that day would serve as a powerful reminder of why she had worked so hard to create a culture of respect within her company, and it would set the stage for an unforgettable lesson that would resonate throughout her organization. Heading 2. The unannounced visit to her store. With her values firmly in place and her brand well established, the young billionaire decided it was time to test if those principles were being upheld at every level of her business. She wanted to see how her staff treated people when they didn't know the owner was watching. To truly understand the culture she had fostered, she planned a quiet, unannounced visit to one of her flagship stores, located in the heart of the city's luxurious shopping district, a stunning location where countless people passed by daily, drawn to the shimmering displays behind its polished glass. On the day of her visit, she dressed in a way that was both elegant and modest, blending high fashion with subtlety. Her outfit, chosen with care, included a simple yet stylish black dress and minimal accessories that gave her an air of refinement without revealing her wealth. She wanted no one to suspect her identity, aiming to blend in as an ordinary customer who was merely browsing. Her demeanor was calm and composed as she entered the showroom, taking in the meticulously arranged displays that showcased the intricate beauty of her jewelry pieces. This store, with its marble floors, warm lighting, and glistening glass cases, represented everything she had worked for. As she looked around, she felt a surge of pride, appreciating the hard work and dedication that had gone into every inch of the space. Walking through the store, she carefully observed her surroundings, subtly glancing at how her staff interacted with other customers. She watched them greet guests, offer assistance, and handle each piece of jewelry with careful attention. Everything seemed to be running smoothly. The staff appeared professional and courteous, moving with practiced ease. She felt pleased with what she saw, though a part of her knew that appearances could be deceiving. She wanted to test whether they could maintain this professionalism under less obvious circumstances, especially towards someone who didn't fit the profile of a typical luxury shopper. With this in mind, she decided to interact with the products, giving her employees a chance to engage with her. Her attention was drawn to a dazzling necklace, a diamond piece she had designed personally, inspired by themes of resilience and strength. As she lifted the necklace to admire its craftsmanship, her phone rang. A business call she couldn't ignore. Balancing the necklace in one hand, she answered her phone, momentarily distracted by the conversation. The caller, One of her top investors was discussing a critical decision, and she quickly became absorbed, walking slowly toward the door as she considered her response. For a moment her surroundings faded, and she focused solely on the call, gesturing occasionally as she spoke. It was at this precise moment, however, that her presence caught the attention of the store manager. An older man with a stiff demeanor, he prided himself on running a tight ship and held rigid views on who belonged in his store. Not recognizing the young woman and interpreting her appearance and actions through a lens of prejudice, he jumped to conclusions. Without taking a closer look or giving her a chance to explain, he assumed she was an intruder, a potential thief. The sight of her holding an expensive necklace while talking on the phone near the store entrance seemed to validate his bias, leading him to react impulsively. The manager's expression shifted from neutral professionalism to visible irritation as he approached her, his tone laced with quiet hostility. "Excuse me, ma'am," he began, barely concealing his disdain. "Can I ask what you're doing with that necklace?" His voice was loud enough to draw the attention of nearby employees, but instead of engaging with the situation calmly, he continued in an accusatory tone, disregarding any possibility that she might be a legitimate customer. His attitude was unmistakable, a blend of suspicion and unwarranted superiority. Caught off guard, the young billionaire ended her call and looked at him, sensing the hostility in his tone. She tried to explain, but he cut her off, unwilling to listen or give her a chance to speak. To him, she was an outsider, someone who didn't belong in his store, and he was determined to make that clear. Despite her calm demeanor and polite attempts to address his concerns, he continued to interrupt her, showing a complete lack of respect. As the exchange continued, the manager's behavior grew more aggressive. Ignoring any professionalism, he called store security, ordering them to watch her closely while he reached for his phone and dialed the police. The young billionaire stood there, quietly observing his actions, her expression unchanging. Inside, she felt a mixture of frustration and disappointment, but she chose not to reveal her identity or escalate the situation. Instead, she decided to let it play out, wanting to see just how far the manager would go in mistreating someone he deemed unworthy of being there. Within minutes, the police arrived, responding to the manager's exaggerated description of a suspicious individual causing trouble in the store. He wasted no time embellishing his story, painting her as a threat, as someone who didn't belong in such a prestigious establishment. His assumptions, shaped by deep-seated prejudices, had driven him to take actions that bordered on harassment. Standing calmly, the young billionaire allowed herself to be questioned by the officers, choosing not to reveal her true identity. She knew that this incident would serve as a powerful lesson, not only for the manager, but for everyone who witnessed the encounter. As the police officers listened to the manager's account, she could see the looks of discomfort among some of the other employees, who recognized her but remained silent, unwilling to challenge the authority of their superior. She observed them carefully, noting their reluctance to intervene. They were torn between their loyalty to the store and their understanding of right and wrong, yet none of them stepped forward to defend her. This silence only deepened her disappointment, but she remained composed, following the officers as they escorted her out of the store. In her mind, the young billionaire had already made a decision. This experience was a turning point, a moment that revealed the need for a deeper transformation within her organization. She realized that simply speaking about values and respect wasn't enough. She had to enforce them. Although the experience was humiliating, she knew it was also necessary. It had exposed a painful truth about the hidden biases that still existed in her business, and she was determined to address them. As she was led away by the police, she glanced back at the store, the glistening jewelry now a stark reminder of the work that lay ahead. She knew this incident would change everything, setting the stage for a reckoning within her team and a powerful lesson in empathy, accountability, and respect. What had started as a simple visit had turned into a defining moment, one that would not only test her values, but transform her company from within. Heading 3. A shocking encounter with prejudice. As the young billionaire stood there, silently observing the unfolding situation, she was struck by the blatant hostility in the store manager's eyes. She had come into her store with no expectations other than to see how her staff treated customers when no one recognized her. Now, faced with an unanticipated surge of prejudice and animosity, she felt a familiar but painful reminder of the biases that people like her encountered daily, even in spaces they themselves had built. Dressed in simple clothing and blending in with other shoppers, she hadn't anticipated that her very appearance would spark suspicion in the eyes of someone she had hired to represent her brand's values. The manager's accusations came swiftly, his voice sharp and tinged with a barely concealed disdain. His stance was rigid, his gaze scrutinizing every inch of her with an air of quiet judgment. "Miss, you need to put that down and explain what you're doing here," he demanded, his tone cold and dismissive. The young woman tried to respond calmly, hoping that perhaps a polite exchange could ease the tension. "I'm just admiring the necklace," she began, keeping her voice measured. But the manager wasn't interested in listening. Cutting her off mid-sentence, he raised his voice, drawing the attention of other employees and a few customers nearby. The staff seemed uneasy, watching as the scene played out, yet no one stepped forward. She noticed that some of them exchanged uncomfortable glances, recognizing her but unwilling to contradict their superior's aggressive approach. The silence stung, reinforcing her realization that perhaps the principles she had hoped to instill hadn't fully permeated the culture of her team. It was clear that fear of authority outweighed any sense of justice or compassion they might feel, and this disappointed her deeply. The manager's attitude, however, only escalated. He took out his phone and without hesitation called the police, exaggerating his account as he spoke. "We have a suspicious individual here, holding a very expensive item and acting in a disruptive manner," he said, deliberately painting her as a threat. Every word was carefully chosen to provoke a strong response from the authorities, and the young billionaire could feel a wave of frustration and humiliation building inside her. Still, she kept her composure, allowing the situation to unfold without revealing her identity. Moments later, 2 police officers arrived, responding to the manager's call. The young billionaire felt a pang of sadness as they approached her, their expressions cautious but firm. They had been called to handle what they believed was a potential theft based on the manager's one-sided report. They began to question her, their voices calm, but with an underlying tone of authority. She answered politely, offering no resistance, though she felt a deep sense of injustice. She could have easily told them who she was, resolved the matter in seconds, and avoided further humiliation. Yet something stopped her. The choice to remain silent about her identity wasn't a simple one, but in that moment, she understood the power of letting the truth emerge naturally. By keeping her identity hidden, she allowed those involved to reveal their true characters. She saw this as an opportunity to highlight the underlying issues within her store's culture, problems that might otherwise remain unaddressed if she simply asserted her authority. Her silence would force the manager, the staff, and even the police to confront their own biases, and perhaps learn something they would never forget. As the officers continued questioning her, she noticed how the manager looked on with a smug satisfaction, feeling vindicated by the police's involvement. He seemed to believe that his assumptions had been validated, and she couldn't ignore the unsettling pleasure he took in seeing her treated as a suspect. She realized that this encounter was more than just about her. It was about the larger issue of prejudice that permeated not only the luxury industry, but society as a whole. The look in his eyes was one of judgment, shaped by preconceived notions about who should or shouldn't be in a place like this. And that judgment, she knew, was something countless others faced every day. The officers, still unaware of her identity, asked her to accompany them outside. She complied without protest, maintaining her calm as they led her out of the store. She caught one last glimpse of the staff inside, some of whom appeared uncomfortable but remained silent, glued to their spots. None of them had spoken up or questioned the manager's actions, choosing instead to watch passively as the scene unfolded. Their lack of action was as telling as the manager's overt hostility, reinforcing the uncomfortable truth that few were willing to stand up for what was right if it meant challenging authority. Outside, she waited quietly as the officers went through standard procedures, taking her details and asking further questions. She answered them patiently, her demeanor composed and dignified. The manager had followed them out, watching closely, ready to reinforce his allegations if necessary. She felt a wave of sadness as she observed him, recognizing that his actions stemmed from deep-seated biases. He was blind to the fact that the very person he was targeting was the one who had given him the opportunity to work in the store, to represent a brand that stood for dignity and respect. As the police officers finished their questions, the young woman faced a choice. She could easily reveal her identity, ending the encounter and putting the manager in his place. But she chose, instead, to let the incident reach its natural conclusion. She allowed herself to be taken to the station, knowing that this experience would serve as a profound lesson for everyone involved, including herself. She understood that by staying silent, she would reveal the true character of those who worked for her and test the strength of her values within her organization. She spent the night in a holding cell, reflecting on the day's events. The experience was humbling, a stark reminder of the prejudice that persisted even in spaces she had crafted with care. But it also fueled her determination to address these issues head-on. She resolved that this incident would mark a turning point for her company. Her silence had given her valuable insight, and she would use it to reshape the culture within her organization, ensuring that respect and inclusivity were not just words, but lived values. By morning, her personal secretary arrived to bail her out, visibly shaken by what had happened. When she shared the story, her secretary was outraged. But the young billionaire remained calm, reminding her that every experience, no matter how challenging, held a purpose. She knew that this encounter had given her a rare glimpse into the hearts and minds of those who worked for her, and she intended to use that insight to bring about meaningful change. As she left the station, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She knew that her return to the store would not only serve as a reckoning for the manager, but as a pivotal moment for the entire team. What had started as a simple visit had transformed into a powerful lesson, one that she was determined to impart to everyone involved. Heading 4. The return to the store and the manager's reckoning. The very next day, the young billionaire was determined to return to the store, now fully prepared to address the events that had unfolded. She had spent the previous night reflecting on the encounter, coming to a firm decision. Her experience at her own store had been an eye-opener, exposing the deep-rooted biases within her team, and specifically within the manager she had entrusted to uphold the values of her brand. Today, she would return not as a silent observer, but as the true owner, intent on delivering a lesson that would resonate with everyone involved. This time, she chose to dress in a way that reflected her authority. A sharp, tailored suit that radiated confidence and sophistication. Alongside her were two trusted security personnel, both of whom had been briefed about the previous day's incident. They knew what had happened and were fully prepared to intervene if anyone dared to repeat yesterday's actions. The young billionaire wasn't planning to confront the staff aggressively, but she wanted her presence to make an impact. She was there to remind them, and especially the manager, of who she truly was. As she entered the store, a hush fell over the employees who recognized her. The same staff members who had remained silent the previous day now watched her in shock and apprehension, aware that their inaction might soon come back to haunt them. Their nervous glances and tense expressions confirmed what she had suspected. They were aware of the manager's behavior, yet none of them had chosen to intervene. This was not just a problem with one individual, she realized. It was a cultural issue that ran deeper, an issue she was now determined to address. With a calm but authoritative expression, she made her way to the main showroom, where the manager stood behind the counter, oblivious to her identity. Seeing her approach, he wore the same dismissive look as the day before, clearly preparing to address her with the same prejudice he had shown. But before he could open his mouth, her security personnel stepped forward, positioning themselves beside her in a show of quiet strength. The manager's confident smirk faltered as he took in the sight, his eyes darting nervously between her and the imposing figures at her side. The young billionaire took a deep breath, her gaze steady as she addressed him. "Good morning. Do you remember me from yesterday?" she asked, her voice cool and measured. The manager's expression shifted from confusion to unease as he struggled to process her question. The familiarity in her tone, combined with the guarded stance of her security personnel, left him visibly unsettled. His face grew pale as he stammered, searching for a response. I'm not sure," he managed to say, his confidence dwindling by the second. She held his gaze, allowing the weight of the moment to sink in. "Yesterday, you accused me of theft," she continued, her voice unwavering. "You judged me, harassed me, and ultimately had me taken away in front of everyone without even giving me a chance to explain myself. Do you remember that now?" Her words were calm, but laden with a quiet authority that made the manager shift uncomfortably. Realization dawned on him, and his expression transformed from confusion to horror as he began to understand the full extent of his mistake. Silence filled the room as other employees gathered around, drawn by the intensity of the exchange. The manager stuttered, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know. I thought—" He trailed off, unable to justify his actions. The young billionaire took a step closer, her presence commanding the room. "You thought that because of the way I looked I didn't belong here. You assumed I was a threat without even knowing who I was." Her tone was calm but unyielding, each word hitting him like a hammer, and he stood there, visibly shrinking under her gaze. Seeing his discomfort, she continued, her voice steady and composed. "I came here yesterday to observe how my employees treat customers, especially those who don't look like they belong in a luxury store." She looked him in the eye, her expression filled with the disappointment that words couldn't convey. "And you failed. You failed as a representative of this brand and everything it stands for. You judged someone based on appearance alone and acted with cruelty and prejudice." The manager's face fell, and his entire demeanor changed. Gone was the arrogance and smug confidence from the day before. Now he was visibly shaken, fully aware of the gravity of his actions. Realizing the extent of his mistake, he began to stammer, desperation coloring his voice. "Please, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I thought you were—" His words trailed off, and he glanced around, searching for someone to support him, but no one dared to come to his aid. Even his own staff members looked away, unwilling to associate themselves with his behavior. The young billionaire watched him carefully, her gaze unwavering. She wanted to ensure that he understood the full impact of his actions, not just on her, but on the values that her brand was built upon. She knew that her decision would set a precedent, one that would remind everyone in the room and in her company that prejudice and disrespect would not be tolerated. The manager, now fully aware of the position he was in, began pleading. "Please, I need this job. I have a family. My kids, they're still young. I didn't mean to offend you. I was just doing my job." His voice cracked with desperation as he tried to appeal to her compassion. Tears began to well up in his eyes, and he clasped his hands together, his expression one of genuine fear. The young billionaire took a deep breath, maintaining her composure as she weighed his words. She knew that he was desperate, that he feared the consequences of his actions. Yet she also understood that allowing him to remain in his position would send the wrong message to the rest of her employees. If she forgave him, it might imply that behavior like his could be excused under certain circumstances, undermining the very culture of respect and inclusivity she was determined to build. With quiet firmness, she responded, "I understand your situation, but that doesn't excuse your behavior." She looked around at the rest of the staff, who were watching in stunned silence, and continued, "This isn't just about you. This is about creating an environment where everyone feels respected, no matter who they are or what they look like. You fail to uphold those values, and there must be consequences." She paused, allowing her words to sink in before delivering her final verdict. "You're dismissed from your position, effective immediately." Her voice was steady, leaving no room for negotiation or debate. The manager's face crumpled, realizing that his pleas had fallen on deaf ears. As he was escorted out of the store by security, he looked back, his face a mixture of regret and disbelief. The reality of his actions and their repercussions had finally sunk in. Once he was gone, the young billionaire turned her attention to the remaining employees. She addressed them with a tone of calm authority, her gaze sweeping across the room. "Let this be a lesson to everyone here," she began, her voice carrying the weight of her words. "This brand stands for respect, inclusivity, and dignity. If you cannot treat every customer with the same level of courtesy and kindness, then you do not belong here." Her words resonated through the room, leaving no doubt that she was serious about upholding the values she had worked so hard to establish. The employees looked at her with newfound respect, understanding that she wasn't just another wealthy owner detached from the realities of her business. She was someone who believed in her values and was willing to defend them, even if it meant confronting her own staff. Her presence, her words, and the firmness of her actions left an indelible mark on everyone in the room. In that moment, she knew that her decision, though difficult, was the right one. She had not only held the manager accountable for his actions, but had also reinforced the principles that would guide her brand into the future. This incident would serve as a powerful reminder to everyone, both her employees and customers, that her store was a place of respect and inclusivity, where everyone was welcome. Heading 5. Building a new culture of respect and inclusivity. After the dramatic events at the store, the young billionaire knew that a deeper, lasting change was necessary. Firing the manager had been a vital first step, but she recognized that his behavior was likely a symptom of a larger issue within the company culture. She was determined to transform her brand's environment from the ground up, creating a workplace where respect, dignity, and inclusivity were not just words but lived principles. This journey would require time, commitment, and a clear strategy, but she was prepared to invest all three to ensure lasting change. Her first step was to call a company-wide meeting with all the employees. She gathered them in the store's spacious showroom, where they would have the opportunity to hear her directly. The atmosphere was tense. Some staff members looked nervous, unsure of what to expect after witnessing the previous day's incident. But as the young billionaire took her place at the front, her calm, determined expression reassured them that this was not about punishment, but about building a better, more compassionate workplace. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice steady and inviting. "What happened yesterday was a difficult and painful experience, but it revealed something crucial about our company. It showed us that we need to make serious changes to our culture and how we treat every person who walks through these doors, no matter who they are or what they look like." Her words resonated in the room, and she could see a mix of guilt, relief, and determination in her employees' faces. She continued, explaining her vision for the future of the brand. "I want this store to be a place where everyone feels valued and respected, where our actions reflect the inclusivity and kindness we claim to stand for. And that requires commitment from each and every one of us." She spoke passionately, laying out her expectations and how they could work together to create a space that embodied those values. She emphasized that they were not just representing her or the brand, but representing principles that were bigger than any individual. To ensure that these values were not just talked about, but actively practiced, she announced a series of initiatives aimed at reinforcing a culture of respect and empathy. She introduced a mandatory training program focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. The training would go beyond surface-level lessons, digging deep into issues of unconscious bias, prejudice, and the importance of empathy. She wanted her employees to understand the impact of their actions and to see things from perspectives they might not have considered before. Additionally, she implemented a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination or disrespect. Any behavior that went against the core values of the brand would result in immediate consequences, regardless of the person's position within the company. She explained that this wasn't about punishment, but about holding each other accountable. She wanted her employees to feel empowered, to call out problematic behavior, and to know that their concerns would be taken seriously. To foster a sense of community, she also created regular team meetings where employees could share their thoughts, concerns, and ideas openly. She encouraged them to discuss not only their work, but also the challenges they faced and the values they wanted to see reflected in their workplace. These meetings became a space for honest conversations, allowing employees to connect on a human level and build mutual respect. Over time, these initiatives started to create a noticeable shift in the store's atmosphere. As she walked through the store in the weeks that followed, she noticed a new energy among her employees. Conversations were more open, interactions with customers more genuine, and the team seemed more cohesive. The once tense and impersonal environment had given way to a space that was welcoming and warm. She saw employees assisting each other, stepping in to help with difficult customers, and even sharing personal stories that brought them closer together. It was clear that her efforts were starting to bear fruit, and she felt a deep sense of satisfaction knowing that she was fostering a positive and inclusive workplace. Her commitment to this transformation was unwavering, and she knew that there was still much work to be done. But seeing the changes in her employees' attitudes and the positive responses from customers reassured her that she was on the right path. This was the kind of environment she had always envisioned, a place where people felt valued and respected. She was proud of her team and the progress they had made, and she knew that this new culture of respect and inclusivity would only grow stronger in the years to come. Heading 6. Reflecting on the journey and the power of resilience. As the young billionaire reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point, she couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. The experience had been challenging, testing her patience, resilience, and leadership in ways she hadn't anticipated. But it had also taught her invaluable lessons about the power of standing up for her values and the impact of creating a space where everyone felt seen and respected. In the end, she realized that the experience had strengthened her commitment to making her company a place of true inclusivity and kindness. Looking back on that fateful day, she understood that her decision to remain silent about her identity had been pivotal. By allowing the situation to unfold as it did, she had given her team and herself a profound lesson in humility and empathy. She had experienced the harsh realities of prejudice firsthand, and this had deepened her understanding of the struggles that so many people face every day. This empathy would guide her in her future decisions, reminding her to always put respect and compassion at the forefront of her business. She also reflected on the importance of resilience. That experience had been deeply humiliating, yet she had chosen not to let it defeat her. Instead, she had used it as a catalyst for change, transforming a painful incident into an opportunity for growth. Her resilience had not only allowed her to confront the issues within her store, but had also inspired her employees to rise above their own biases and create a more inclusive culture. In this way, the experience had shaped her into a stronger, more compassionate leader, one who was committed to leaving a positive legacy. Her story became an inspiration within the industry, a reminder of the importance of humility and integrity. News of the incident eventually spread, with her employees sharing their own stories of transformation and growth. Customers too began to notice the difference, praising the store's welcoming atmosphere and the genuine respect they felt from the staff. The young billionaire's brand became known not just for its luxury products, but for its dedication to fostering an inclusive and compassionate environment. Her journey became a testament to the power of empathy and resilience, inspiring other business leaders to prioritize humanity in their own companies. The young billionaire knew that the journey was far from over. She continued to strive for improvement, holding regular discussions with her employees and welcoming feedback from customers. Her experience had shown her that leadership was not about wielding power, but about lifting others up and creating a space where everyone could thrive. She was determined to lead with kindness and integrity, knowing that true success came not from wealth, but from the impact she had on the lives of others. In the years that followed, her company flourished, becoming a symbol of hope and progress in the luxury industry. She continued to invest in her employees, providing them with opportunities for personal and professional growth. Her commitment to inclusivity became a cornerstone of her brand, and her journey served as a powerful reminder that no challenge was too great when met with courage, compassion, and resilience. As she reflected on her journey, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. The incident had been painful, but it had also opened her eyes to the strength within her and the power of her values. She knew that this was just the beginning, that her journey would continue as long as she remained true to her principles. And with each step forward, she was more determined than ever to build a legacy of kindness, respect, and integrity, one that would inspire others to do the same.